All right, everybody. So, welcome to the very first Femme Beatmaking Virtual Book Club. My name is Maurika Smotherman, and I am a PhD student in the Department of Communication, Rhetoric, and Digital Media at NC State. I also work in the library's Digital Media Lab as their graduate extension assistant. And Femme Beatmaking is an event series I started maybe a year or two ago where we're making space for people who are femme identifying, non-binary, or women to come into our space and engage with all of the tools and technologies that we have. We also make space for our allies. So this is really a space for anyone who supports those underrepresented groups and the acquisition of knowledge, whether that's technological knowledge, media production knowledge in spaces like media labs, which are kind of entrenched in this history of racism, sexism, and all of these other things and issues that we can talk about in relation to our identities and how we see ourselves. So the book club is basically an extension of that event series so that we can talk about some really cool and interesting works that are being done by people who are parts of these communities. And today I am so happy to be welcoming Ariel Robinson. Ariel, I don't know if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the discussion.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. My name is Arial Robinson. I'm a multidisciplinary artist. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. I graduated from North Carolina A&T with a degree in multimedia journalism. And I now work across a few different fields, freelancing, one of them being an author. So I'm the author of Songs from the Girls Room, which is my debut poetry collection and my third book. And in this book, I basically use music as a vehicle to talk about my coming of age experience in the bathroom. So when I was younger, I had my CD player and I locked the door and go in the bathroom. And that was the first time that I really got to be independent and really listen to music. And music has always been like a big part of my life. And so me just graduating from college in 2023 and then moving to New York and just trying to find myself, I started to develop this poetry collection, just talking about a lot of different themes that I was going through. I also think it's just really important to have literature, books, media that speak to the Black woman's coming of age experience, especially post pandemic, because that did one on a lot of us, especially artists, creatives that are Black and women and STEM identifying. So, yeah, I like to create work that is central to that, but also central to the Southern perspective. And that shows up in a lot of different mediums. And so that's why I call myself a multidisciplinary artist, because I'm always exploring different mediums and ways of communicating with other people.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Such a humble, amazing artist. So definitely check out Ariel's work. I shared a link in the chat to Songs from the Girls Room on the Solar Lab, which is your website, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in the discussion today. I also wanted to ask, Princess, did you want to maybe share what brought you to this event, why you wanted to join, if you're comfortable sharing that? I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I guess for me, like music is very personal to me. I think it kind of reflects like where I am in life. And so I kind of like how Ariel was talking about like her book and like how it's kind of like a coming of age type of, I guess symbolizing that part of your life, like coming of age and things like that. And it kind of made me reminded me of like all my playlists and things like that and how each year I make a playlist of like what I want for that year or like what that year symbolized for me. And it kind of I guess it kind of reflected that and like I just wanted to hear more about like other people's processes and like in that realm, I guess.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, I think we're gonna have a really great discussion talking about things like what you just mentioned, Princess, as well as some other themes. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. I'm gonna start sharing my screen. And of course, here's the book, Songs from the Girls Room. I also have my own copy. I don't know if it will show since my green screen is on. Ariel, I know you have a copy in front of you too, but you can purchase the book from Ariel's website. Also, since North Carolina Central is an interinstitutional school along with NC State, I think Princess, you would be able to check it out from our library. So we do have a copy of Songs from the Girls' Room available through our library if you're interested in that. Um, Feel free to let me know if you want more details. Okay. Hold on, I might have to stop and start again. Okay, can everyone see my screen and the slides in front of me? Perfect. Thank you so much. Um, All right, so this is the first in a series of virtual book club meetings, and we're going to be talking about two materials actually. So, in addition to Songs from the Girls' Room, we're also going to talk about a documentary that was produced for ESPN's 30 for 30 Shorts series, and it's called Black Girls Play the Stories of Hand Games. And we'll get into a clip from that documentary in a second, so I'll talk more about it then. The other two books that we're scheduled to discuss are Made in New Rico. So we'll be talking about a chapter from that next month. And then I think in April is when we'll be talking about a selection from Feenan, R&B music and the materiality of Black femme voices and technology. I believe these books are available through our libraries, and I can also provide a link if someone's interested in that. Just feel free to email me. So I thought we could maybe start off by looking at a clip from the documentary, just because when I was thinking about this series and the materials that we might want to explore, Songs from the Girls' Room, of course, came to mind. And I also thought about the work of a scholar, Kira Gaunt, who wrote a book about Black girls' games and basically how that formed a foundation for popular music and Black popular culture more broadly. So let's just take a look at about 4 minutes from this documentary.
The most important instrument was the body. They created songs, they created dances, and the children created hand games.
Some of the games are new games, and some of the games that I taught my children. Them is the old-time games that my father and mother taught to me.
At its core, the music of diaspora is dance music, whether it's West African drummers playing for dancers, jazz music in its prime, and there's dancers on the floor, whether it's hip hop and people are dancing, whether it's R&B and people are slow dancing, all the way back to hand games.
And you find metrical complexity that locks between the beats. That rhythmic complexity you can trace back to a lot of African ideals. It's not just 1, 2, 3. You have a set pattern like an algorithm, and then it expands. There's the beat, there's the rhymes, and we swap beats, and it sounds very much like hip-hop. So Girls' Game Song is inspiring popular music. Walking the Dog by Rufus Thomas, 1963 single. Mary Mac. Miss Mary Mac is in every English-speaking nation. The artist Juicy J recorded a song called Mary Mac in 2015. Nas recorded Uchi Wally Wally, based on a Jamaican game song. Lil Anthony and the Imperials, Shimmy Shimmy Cocoa Pop.
I often wondered what inspired the man who wrote the song to think up the words.
That song is a part of a game song called Down Down Baby, Down Down the Roller Coaster.
Chimmy, chimmy, cocoa pop, chimmy, chimmy, pow.
You can then trace it 50 years later to Nelly's country grammar. So this was pervasive. Black girls' hand clapping games are folk culture, which means they're part of the public domain. No one's gonna come around and be like, oh, that was borrowed from a girl's game song. So if we have this hidden musicianship among Black girls, what happened? How did hip hop, funk, jazz, even gospel grow to be dominated by men? The answer is pretty simple. The social institutions in which music is made have been dominated by men. Down, down, baby, down, down, the roller coaster, sweet, sweet baby, I never let you go. Everything about growing up from a girl to a woman teaches us we should leave our games behind. Whereas boys will continue to play their same games throughout their lives.
Okay, so that was just an excerpt from
The most
the documentary, and I thought we could start off with that just because this documentary explores the connections between Black girlhood, identity, musical play, and popular music. And since we're talking about how identity is kind of shaped by music, I thought maybe we could start off with this question about play. So, Ariel, I kind of want to propose this to you, but Princess, please respond if you have some thoughts on this. So I was thinking, what is the role of play in shaping your understanding of music and identity? And I guess does this exploration of hand games in Black girls musical play as kind of central to popular culture and popular music say anything to you at all, Ariel?
Absolutely. It's really interesting because, like, prior to you bringing this to me, I never really thought about how impactful hand games could be. But when I look back on my background and my upbringing, especially because I have two sisters and I grew up in a house predominantly with women, hand games and clapping, like, that's something that played a big role in, like, not only us bonding together, but like if my mom's in a good mood, there might not be any music playing and she might be like in the kitchen cooking food, and then she just starts doing a little sway and clapping and making her own beat. And I think that falls under the category of play as well, and this idea of just, in my own experience, especially growing up around a lot of Black women, there was always a lot of like making up dances, making up songs, making up performances just for the fun of it, because music and playing and dance and worship, but not even worship as like purely religion, but like worship and fellowship were all things that gave us community and like helped us to understand who we were and where we fit. And so I think that play plays a huge role in me understanding music and identity, because it introduced me to rhythm and beat and being a part of a choir or a community and playing my role, but equally being able to find different pockets where I'm like, oh, this person is like doing, a one clap, and then this other person just doubled that. And then I'm going to add in four claps per minute or per beat, things of that nature. So I think playing around with it and having fun and hearing, what your voice can make or what your hands can make or what your feet can make when you're stomping, I think all of that played a huge role in me understanding myself. But the idea of play was really the foundation because it was just simply fun for us, like who can be the loudest, who can remember it, down to like if you're about to play tag and you're doing like the little bubble gum in a dish, like around, like even setting up the game, there was music. And through that, you were able to identify, like, are you going to be the one to memorize it? Are you going to be the one to hold the rhythm down or the beat or the tempo, things of that nature? So I would say it played a huge role in my upbringing, and it still is serving as a solid foundation to the work that I'm creating now.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I came across this work on Black girls in musical play recently as well. So I was really like I guess it kind of inspired me a lot, and then it also validated a lot of the musical knowledge that I feel like I gained and even created in my youth. At which at the time you're not thinking about it as deeply. As they're talking about it here, like I think we kind of think of these things as just daily, everyday activities. So there isn't this greater idea of like, oh, I'm a cultural producer attached to that. And I love that this type of work, as well as your book, is kind of highlighting how there are these really deep connections between Black girlhood, coming of age, and musicianship. And this also makes me think about, I don't know if anyone has seen the movie Crooklyn. Y'all probably have, but in Crooklyn, they show so many different scenes of Black girls playing games like jump roping, hand clapping, and then just Black children generally having fun, but using their bodies to play with each other and to produce rhythm and beats. So all of this, I feel like, is so connected, and in some ways has even been kind of explored before in other forms of media, but really not recognized on like a larger scale as significant and important in like Black cultural production. Um,
I
yeah.
also want to add, like, I think that it also speaks to like not just Black one or youth and adolescence, but I also think it just speaks to Black culture in general when this idea of we don't need to have, you know, the most expensive toys or the most crazy equipment to have fun, to play with each other, to fellowship and have community. And so it's just interesting that music is at the root of it all. But I do think it speaks to like this greater idea of Black people will make anything out of nothing. You know, like we can find each other, find music, find identity through, again, our own bodies and what we can create from that. And we don't need physical things. Granted, it's nice to have toys and different, like your jump ropes and things of that nature where they help to enrich that experience. But regardless, Black people are going to turn nothing into something. And I think that's really beautiful too.
Yeah, I even remember like being growing up in South Carolina and using like the little telephone wire as a jump rope. I don't even know if that's what it's called, like the cord that you use to plug in like the old school telephones. So yeah, like making a way out of no way is for sure so important, I think. So this question kind of builds on the previous discussion, and I guess let's just focus on the last part because I do want to get into talking more about the selections from your book. So, I guess this question is proposing like, how do you think we can continue to amplify Black girls' knowledge systems, Black women's knowledge systems, and to validate these as like true forms of knowledge and real forms of culture, like in material ways.
Yeah, I really think it comes down to acknowledging us in physical forms, in books, in exhibitions, in documentaries and videos, things that are physical, but also preserving them and creating space where they're accessible. I think a lot of times people will either forget about us or then they'll include us and it's not accessible for people to learn about it, or we're not getting the eyes and the ears to be able to see it and to share it. So I think it really comes down to embedding us in physical documentation and having people who are going to preserve those stories, who are going to tell them accurately, who are going to tell them with passion, so that 2, 3, 4, 5 generations from now, people aren't confused about our stories, and so that they're not just these kind of like folk tales, but they're historical facts where it's like, yes, we did this, and this is how it impacted this person, and we have this book or this documentary or this physical exhibition where you can go and you can learn about it and you can see it for yourself and then take that and, you know, continue that legacy and story.
Yeah, and I think that's what Songs from the Girls' Room does. So let's get into talking about that. So this is a book, but honestly, I'm kind of even hesitant to call it a book because I feel like it's so much more than that. You also created an exhibition and a playlist to go along with the book, and I've included some QR codes on the screen for anyone who wants to scan those to check them out, but we also have some links. So I thought first we could maybe take a look at these really cool assets that you created to go along with the book, and then we can talk about the exhibition as well as what you term the musical listening experience that helped to shape the book. Okay, let me start sharing again. All right, so on my screen, you should be seeing the exhibition. Is everyone seeing that? Okay, cool. So I just thought this was such an amazing thing or supplementary material to include with the book and to give us more insight into your process, which I know is really important to you, like that method of creating, exploring, documenting, and reflecting. So I really love how you created this space for people to engage with as they're exploring the different materials that you've included. And there were these audio components that you included, which I thought were so amazing. I wanted to play one of them. It was where you were like, I think singing in the shower. I think it's your voice of you singing in the shower. I also really love the um, mixture between like these images that kind of look like those old school framed photos. And then, of course, like the moving images, the GIFs or the GIFs, juxtaposed with that in this exhibit space. I thought that this was really created with such care and, of course, that wonderful aesthetic style that you have. Another thing that I really found interesting is that you said you were inspired by the Girls' Room sketch from the Amanda Show, which I think anybody who is like a child of the Nickelodeon days, like the 2000s, would resonate with. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about the exhibition, your thought process behind this, and why you wanted to include like this photo story, these images to kind of go along with the project. And I'll stop sharing my screen for you to talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, when I created the book, I just thought people wouldn't understand it. And so I'm like, I just have to over articulate myself. But I'm also in a space where I want to get to a point where I regularly have physical exhibitions, where I have collaborations with universities and museums and galleries, where when I put out a book or a song or literally any single like artistic composition where there's like a physical experiential activation piece to it as well so that people can engage the full body. And so when I was creating the digital exhibition, I'm like, this could be a start. But a lot of people don't know that this is the second iteration of the exhibition. So before I even knew that there would be a book, basically in the summer of 2022, I got all my stuff stolen. Like I went on a brand trip and I literally got my laptop, my camera, my recording equipment, like literally everything stolen. So all I had was my phone, my keys to my house, some clothes. And so when I got back, I mean, I still had things to create with, like pencil and paper, but I was not used to that because I had all of this technology. And I really felt like I was grieving that because like I don't have children or anything like that, but like my art and my tools and my technology, those are my babies. And that's what I use to express myself. And so I was going through this grieving process of literally having all my stuff one day. And then the next day, you're just like, okay, what do I do now? How do I recover this? How do I continue to create? It felt like my voice was kind of stolen. And so from there, I started to write these excerpts on my like private like Instagram with just me and my like close friends. And so someone was like, this is giving less of Instagram captions and more of like book. Like this is giving excerpts from books. And so I was like, okay, this is cool. So I had maybe like 6 or 7 poems that were just free verse poems of me just talking about like how I felt having these really intense emotions. And I put it on the Solar Lab And so from there, you could literally, I had them more written out as letters. So like dear, insert emotion, and then the free verse poem. And so, it's now 2, 3 years later from that. And I'm like, okay, I want to create a book from these poems, but it needs to be more than that. And after the book was complete, I'm like, I want to bring back that mini exhibition that I had and really flesh it out and give it more life. And so through that, I was thinking, okay, I need to have photos, but I wanted to have those motion graphics of me in the bathroom and showing how it takes a lot of different forms, from me cleaning it and showing my appreciation to it, to me singing and using the acoustics to kind of mirror the idea of like a microphone, down to me just like dancing and having a good time and just showing the full scope of what it means to be a young Black woman in the 21st century in this decade. And then adding those audios was that last component where I'm like, I'm gonna have a playlist, I'm gonna have the actual music, but I want people to kind of hear from me. And so then you hear me singing in the shower, and like literally me singing in the shower is something I do all the time. Like my family can tell you one thing about me, I'm going to the bathroom and I'm gonna sing. Or like if I'm having, or I'm recording myself and I'm talking about how I feel. And one of the audios has like Frank Ocean under it because Frank Ocean has played like a huge part in my coming of age when I was a teenager. I used to listen to him all the time. And so I just recorded that, and he just happened to be playing in the background. And I'm like, okay, I want to use this audio. And that audio is from 2020. We're in the pandemic. I was going back to school that fall from, leaving that spring because of the pandemic. So I was just in an interesting time. And so I wanted to create this digital exhibition where people could really interact with my inspirations and engage with what I was saying beyond me just saying it. And so like one part of the exhibition, there are like different parts of the bathroom, like the toilet, the sink, and you can click on them. It goes to what seems to be a random link, but it's not random. It's might go to a link of lyrics or a poem or a documentary, because these are all things that I've consumed and that informed my process when creating this book, but are also just things that I frequently, consume because they inspire me and make me feel good, or they make me sad and they make me feel something. So I wanted to create that exhibition so that people could engage with the book and also connect them to other things beyond just what I'm creating. I read this book called Still Like an Artist, and in that book, it talks about how, and this is something that I reference in my lecture as well. But in that book, it just talks about like if you're inspired by someone, you should figure out who they're inspired by, and then you start to learn about history and where people were, what they were doing 50, 60, 100 years ago. And so I thought that this exhibition could take that same form where it's like, if you find me and you like my work and you come to this exhibition, you find an artist that I like. And then from there, you can find an artist they like. And now you're really, really researching and you're going down these rabbit holes that lead you to learn more about Black creators, Black musicians, Black voices. So yeah, and then from that, I was like, well, we have to have the music itself. Like, I want people to hear the Usher, the Destiny's Child, the whatever else CB Wonders that are on that playlist, so they know the type of music that I'm listening to. And maybe they'll find a new song they like.
Yeah, I was listening to the playlist earlier today, and I love how it starts off with that Aretha Franklin song. I just think that's such a strong way to kind of ground the playlist. And I know you created this in partnership with Hum House Radio. Hopefully I'm saying that right. I'm not
Yes.
as familiar with their work, but was there a story behind that collaboration?
Yeah, so Kaya, the owner of Hum House, which is a brand that sells records, her dad was a DJ. And so he gave her all of his old records and she started a business with it. And she had a series where she was partnering with different creators that she admired or just really liked their work. And we were creating these like radio playlists to be hosted on her platform, because in last year when this book came out, I didn't have any streaming services. So I was literally either listening on my CD player or going on YouTube, and it was forcing me to be a lot more intentional with the type of music that I was listening to, because you don't have an algorithm that's always feeding you new music, new playlists. You have to really sit with that music. And so she reached out to me and was like, hey, I want to put this out. And I'm like, okay, bet, let's do it. So she allowed me to really craft the playlist. And then from there, she housed it and then gave it a platform for her followers and my followers to be able to listen to it. So that was really exciting and important, because also another woman creator who is just creating space for the music to live, for people to take that music to add it to their own playlist. And there's also a lot of other creators within that series where you get to see how someone like myself, a multidisciplinary artist with this book, views music as opposed to like a DJ or a photographer, how they view music. So it's really cool to be not only the first playlist in that series, but to be able to collaborate with her.
That's an amazing story. I love that. I'm gonna have to check out their work, and I put a link to the playlist in the chat, and you can also see this on the screen. So 4 hours of amazing music. Definitely check that out.
Yes, and we collaborated on the playlist cover as well. So that was
Oh,
us
really?
working together. So like the blue represents Hum House, and then inside you see that burgundy or that like maroonish color. So that's kind of like her housing me and giving me this platform to just share my music. So that was also really fun to be able to collaborate on that.
Wow, that's beautiful, and I love the story behind that design. Um, Thank you so much for sharing. So you've kind of hinted at this a little bit, but I'm wondering what attracted you to the specific medium of poetry, and have you always considered yourself to be a poet?
Yeah, so the answer to that in the second part, have I always considered myself a poet? No. And what attracted me to the medium, it was less about being attracted to the medium and more about this is the only way that I can articulate this. So when I had those 6, 7 poems from the summer of 2022, it was now the summer of 2023. I was sitting down with that work and I'm like, I just don't feel like this is complete. I don't feel like it's really gotten what it deserves. I think that more people need to hear these words and see them and like build off of them. And so at first I was thinking to choose one poem and write a novel based off of that poem. But I'm like, well, that would neglect the others. And I don't know. So when I was doing a little bit of research just about different ways that it could show up, it brought me to poetry. And I was like, wait, I kind of am a poet because really I've been writing music since I was like 13 years old. So I've been writing and creating these poems and not really considering myself a poet because I come from more of that musical background. But when I was like, okay, I started doing more research about like Nikki Giovanni, Sophia Sanchez, even some more like contemporary poets. And I was like, okay, wait, I can do this. I already have a little bit. I might as well just go all the way. And so from there, I kind of added on poet to that multidisciplinary artistry. But no, I never really considered myself a poet because I just felt like I didn't have an understanding of it. I also think I was a little afraid of it because it is so free flowing. And you know, there are different like rules and tactics that you can use to better articulate yourself. But even in high school, when we'd have to write poetry or do certain things, I'd go home and write music like it's nothing. But then I'd be in class like, I don't know if I'm good at this. I don't know, just trying to figure out like if I was good. But poetry isn't about being good or bad. It's a lot more fluid than that. And through that summer of 2023, I learned a lot about that based off of the work I already had. And I was like, okay, now I can start welcoming in these different techniques and learning and just being a student as opposed to being afraid that I'm not going to be good at something.
Yeah, I think that speaks to a lot of people's experiences. I mean, maybe even the idea of just being an artist and calling yourself an artist. A lot of people can be hesitant to do that, especially if you're from a historically marginalized group, just feeling like not validated in that space. So I'm really glad that you're able to like step into these different roles as an artist and really assert yourself in those spaces as well. And I definitely see that through the work that you make. So you kind of spoke on this in the beginning when you were talking about this project, but I was wondering if you could kind of elaborate on the inspiration to focus on the bathroom as a transformative space and kind of talk about the importance of the bathroom and helping you to explore things like your femininity and your other aspects of your identity.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely started with that Amanda Bynes, the Amanda Show sketch. Seeing that really just like did one for me because it just showed like even though it was funny and it was there for comedic like purposes, I was able to see like, oh, me going to the bathroom and being like, oh, I'm gonna take my homegirl to the bathroom or like she's gonna look in the mirror and I'm gonna use the bathroom, or I'm gonna go by myself and lock the door and be by myself and look in the mirror. After I seen that sketch growing up, I didn't really think much about it. And it wasn't until 2020, I had just put out my first book, The Modern Day Black Alphabet, and I was going through all of my inspiration and mood boards that I have. And I seen the like title card of the girls' room from the Amanda Bynes show, and it really just clicked right then and there. I'm like, this is fire. I want to do something with this. And so from there, I shot a set of photos. It was two different parts of the same set of photos. And I just put them out on Instagram. I ended up archiving them because I was like, I don't know if people are like, maybe this is too early. I just put out a project and people aren't really like receiving it. But like from seeing that title card again back in 2020 and shooting those photos, it really just crafted a space that I knew that I was going to build on with the bathroom and the girls' room, because it's a place I occupy so much, where I'm like just in there singing, or I'm trying out some new makeup or some hair, or even when I was shooting the Modern Day Black Alphabet, S is for shea butter. And like one of the photos that I use for it, it kind of highlights all of the different products that sit on the top of the counter. And I'm like, this is really interesting because it says a lot about the type of person, the type of woman, the type of Black woman. Like I might have this specific product on top of my counter and you might have another type. And I think that is also a form of communication and identification. And so from that, when I was just thinking about these poems and I seen those photos, I'm like, this is two different instances, but they're occupying the same space, the same themes. And so from there, I'm like, I want to build on this. But even when I was writing the book, I was staying at different Airbnbs like every 2 weeks in New York. And so every bathroom was different. And so I was able to really see like what the bathroom means. And it's like, okay, this bathroom I really enjoy because it has this type of faucet or these type of acoustics. And I think that all plays into my femininity and my idea of like, what does it mean to be a woman? When you go in the bathroom and you leave out the bathroom, does anything change? And so I was having all of these thoughts because even then, me being 22/23 years old that summer, I'm like, okay, what does it mean to be a woman? I'm supposed to be becoming an adult, but like, what does that mean? What does it mean to identify as a woman? Is it one answer? Is it, a lot of answers? Is it a discussion? So I'm having all these ideas. And most times it's happening in the bathroom, whether I'm taking a shower or washing my hair or doing things that make me be present. The bathroom always does that for me. It makes me be present. It makes me think about things. And so with that combination of seeing that title card, having those few poems plus that original photo series from 2020, I was like, okay, we're cooking with something. Something is happening. I'm starting to really see this idea become a full one. And again, it all happened in the girls' room, aka the bathroom.
Yeah, that's really speaking to me about just appreciating the spaces that you have and the spaces that you occupy, and the things that happen in those spaces too, like getting ready for the day or wash day, which can be super long. So in addition to talking about the bathroom, which I guess I'm kind of considering to be like more of an interior domestic space, you also explore geographic space in songs from the girls' room. So you talk about things like the differences between the North and the South. And I mean, of course, your experience growing up in the South is really significant to a lot of the pieces that you include. So I was wondering if you'd like to talk about your experience growing up as a Black girl in the South, and then also your experience living up North. And also, how is your identity tied to these geographies, like these geographic spaces and places?
For sure. Growing up in the South, for me, a lot of my experience was based around religion. So when I think about songs from the girls' room, even now, I'm still learning from the work that I produce. I think about the South, I think about sanctuaries and altars and religion and this idea of being very deeply historically rooted because we think about slavery. We think about how a lot of times, like, when people, especially because I have friends who are not from the South, but like their grandparents are, and so their experience is a little bit different because looking at like they're not looking at their experiences from this like historical perspective in that way where it ties back to slavery. It might be like, oh, I'm from New York, so I'm looking at things from like African or Caribbean. You know how it is. Like, I don't know if I'm articulating this the best, but staying in the South and being from the South, and my whole entire family being from the South, there is this really deeply religious like tie between our everyday lives, because religion has always been that outlet, that escape, that community, that thing that bonded people together from slavery till now, as opposed to a lot of times when I'm speaking to my friends who are from California or other places where people migrated, their history, it kind of stops where their grandparents settled. And then from there, they're learning kind of from this external like perspective, as opposed to me. I'm like, this is all deeply internal because all of my family is from this place and none of us have ever migrated to other places and built new stories. And so I think that informs a lot of the ways that I live my life and I go about my art, because when I'm in the South, I'm thinking about my ancestors and my people. And when I'm in the North, I'm thinking more about myself in the future, right? So like the South is kind of like a look at the past and the North is kind of a look to the future and like building something new. And that's not to say that I'm not building new things in the South, because I am, but I don't know, it's different. And then also the idea of space. There's a lot of space, there's a lot of grass, there's a lot of trees. Like when I was growing up in Charlotte, I stayed in a house where I'm passing a farm every day where I'm going home from school. So I'm seeing the cows and the horses and the chickens, as opposed to in the North, I'm getting on the subway and I'm going up to Harlem or wherever I'm staying at the time. And you're just looking at people and life very differently. And for me, that informed the way that my work was, because my lifestyles were completely different. Like when I'm in the South, even now, like I'm changing these things because I'm like, I don't have to just be what the generations were before me, but like the type of food I'm eating, it's not as healthy or as modern or as organic based as if I'm in the North, because a lot of the culture that I'm bringing from the South, it just gets lost in translation because there's so many bodies, so many voices, so many things that are going on. And so I think it's important coming from the South to keep those values and move, like keep those values as I'm going into the North. But yeah, it both informs my work, but the idea of the South is a lot more communal, and then my idea of the North is a lot more individualistic. It's a lot more of standing on my own and articulating who I am and where I come from. And that's played a lot in the way that I go about things and the type of people that are occupying my space when I'm in those different places. I hope that made sense, because I'm kind of all over the place with that question.
No, I feel like it made sense. I feel like if we're talking about like the South in America, there is this very historical aspect to it because this is the region where American slavery took place. So it's a very specific type of experience in history that informs people's relationship to religion and geography and those things. And also I understand what you're saying about like the North and really, I guess, just places where there are these really large cities being more individualistic cultures where it's not really about, uh, I guess, all being in one space because geographically and physically, sometimes that's not even possible in a place like New York. Like the apartments can be so small, space can feel so constrained. So I feel like I totally understand what you're saying.
I want to add to that. It's interesting because there's more space, and this is only my experience. I'm only speaking to my own experience, my own observations. But for me, in the South, there's more space, and that's why we're more drawn to each other, as opposed to the North. There's less space, and everybody's trying to stand on their own and be individualistic. So it's like, yes, I may stay. Let's just talk about apartment complex. There may be only 25 people in my apartment complex down in the South, and there may be, let's say, 250 people in my apartment complex in the North. And there's still this idea of like, yes, there's so many people here, but I'm trying to stand on my own. I want people to hear my voice. I've got to rise above all the noise, as opposed to in the South, we're more spread out, but there seems to just be more of this community and fellowship. And I think that's just from my perspective because I'm not from the North. So someone may argue like, no, 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 the North has more community because there's more people and there's more diversity. Based off my experience, that was not true. It was a lot of like, me, this is me, as opposed to in the South, it's a lot of us. Like, this is us. We go to our church. This is what we do. We find this community. And I think that has definitely informed my work, because a lot of me wanting to get out of the South was because I'm like, I want to be special. I want to be heard. I want people to care about my work beyond the people that love me. And I talk about this, and I believe it's Feed Off the Coffee Table. I talk about this idea of even though I'm getting the love from my family and they're watching me, it's not enough for me. I need to go to the north. I need to go to people who don't know me, people who are very individualistic, because I wanted them to care about me as well. And I wanted it to feel very authentic in its approach, as opposed to I just love you and like what you're doing because you're my daughter, you're my cousin, or you're. And so it's just an interesting idea of space that I have, what is it, observed, because there's less space in the north, yet I feel more alone. And there's more space in the south, yet I feel more like in a community.
Yeah, yeah. And I definitely think it's important to state that these are based on our own perspectives, our own opinions. So, of course, anyone could have like a different idea of this type of topic or discussion that we're having right now. But yeah, I mean, growing up in the South, I think you have an idea of the North and other places that you don't really know what the true experience is until you go there. And it sounds like your personal experience seemed to kind of like fit that same idea that a lot of people kind of have about the North and think about the North before even like visiting there or living there. So I know we only have a few more minutes and yeah, time flew by. I wanted to kind of open up the floor. So Princess, I don't know if you had any specific questions that you might have wanted to ask Ariel before we wrap it up for today, but was there anything you were interested in asking or hearing more about?
I didn't have any specific questions, but I really did enjoy the conversation. I was kind of multitasking right now, so I wasn't like fully tuned in, but I did take some notes. And I want to say that I do agree about the North and South thing. Like I did visit New York and Philly different on different trips, and I was like, it doesn't feel like a lot of community there. Like I felt like, I don't know. I feel like you can't like approach people the same way you do in the South. So I think like what you're speaking to and like it being more individualistic, I kind of resonated with that. Um, but yeah. And I also like the part you said about research that if you're inspired by someone, you need to find out who they're inspired by and like kind of go down that rabbit hole. Because I've definitely done that sometimes too. And I really like that. You brought that up.
Nice, love that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing and just adding on to our conversation. I had so many more questions that I wanted to ask. Like there were questions about hair, and also the relationships with the women in your life. Um, I guess right now, let's just go ahead and plug the book again, because if these are things that you're interested in and that you want to have more insight into from Ariel's perspective, then you should definitely purchase the book. I'm gonna drop that link in the chat one more time. And also remember that if you do have access to the NC State libraries, you would be able to check this book out. Um, yeah, Ariel, was there anything that you might have wanted to just add as a last point before we kind of close out?
Yeah, wait, can you guys see me?
I can see you.
Oh, okay. I would just say that it's been a pleasure to have this body of work out in the world, and I'm excited to just keep talking about it. I know you have more questions, so I'd love to create more space to just kind of talk on those things and get more people chatting about the Black feminine experience and what that looks like, especially via music, hair, religion, spirituality, all those things. But just really glad that I was able to even be here today to start that conversation. This is the first one I'm having about the book this year, and I'm excited to keep creating and being a part of space. So thank you, Maurika, for always just thinking of me and thinking of my projects. And I'm excited to do more this year where it really engages the book and hopefully inspires other people to create bodies of work as well.
And where can we follow you if we want to keep up with all of the amazing things that you've been doing? I guess my final question for you for today was, what future ideas and projects do you have coming out? Especially with like all of the amazing accomplishments that you've had just recently with the the zine fair, the art exhibition, the art fair, like what can we expect next and how can we connect with you and follow you?
Yeah, so you can connect with me on Instagram at I'm.Ariel or at Solar Lab. But also, if you go to arielrobinson.com, all of my links are at the bottom of the homepage. So you can find my Instagram, my Twitter, my LinkedIn, all those things. And in terms of future projects, just taking what I'm doing and continuing to grow on them. So continuing to participate in zine fairs and creating print projects, continuing to facilitate conversations about the work that I'm doing, showing more art, selling more art. Like I'm all over the place, but in the best way possible. And so I'm hoping all those things that I was doing last year and early this year that I continue to do those and keep growing on them and just finding more space and getting more people to join the movement. So yeah, that's the goal.
Thank you so much. I put some links for to connect with Ariel in the chat. And just one last thing before I close this Zoom meeting out, there are some upcoming Femme beat making events, and these are really open to anyone. So even if you're not a student at NC State, just email me at msmuthe@ncsu.edu if you're interested in attending anything that you see up on the screen. So we have our next book club meeting, which is happening on sometime in March. And then we also have a songwriting workshop, a Dreamville DJ workshop, and a beat making workshop coming up. And all of this will be spread out throughout the semester, but here are the QR codes if you want to scan them. There are also links here. So if you have access to this slideshow, you can just click on the images and it will take you to all of those links. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Thank y'all so much for attending, and I really hope that you have an amazing day. And people who are watching this recording back, you're also invited to all of those upcoming events, and you're invited to connect with Ariel and follow all of her amazing work that she'll be doing in the future as well. So, yeah, bye, everybody. Thank you so much for coming.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.